You may not worry about everything, but you're worried about something today. And the question is, how do we battle against our anxiety? Let's talk about it. Constant talk about this deadly virus has fueled anxiety around the globe. But this isn't the only thing causing stress in our lives, is it? I mean, we worry when we lack control in any way, and yet we haven't really lost control. We're just learning again how little control we actually have. So let's admit that we're all anxious about something today. But the problem is, we can't just turn it off. And even though the Bible commands us not to be anxious about anything, it doesn't expect us to immediately stop, as if it was like pushing a button on a robot. Rather, God provides the ammunition for us to fight against worry that so easily consumes our minds and our hearts. And He gives us truth, reasons to obey this command. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 25 to 34, Jesus gives the straightforward command, do not be anxious about your life. He says that again a few verses later, do not be anxious. And again a few verses later, do not be anxious about tomorrow. And what fills the space in between those commands is the cement mix needed to pour a solid foundation of trust in God's fatherly care. He says, don't worry about what you will eat or drink or wear. These are the most basic things in life, aren't they? And he argues, is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? There's more to life than food and drink and clothing, isn't there? If that's all there was, if that's all we needed, why aren't we living longer than we normally do? But even those with abundance of these things can still die young. Why? Because life depends on God's eternal providence, not our persistent scavenging. Thus, worrying about food and drink and clothing each day won't guarantee longer or better lives. He uses birds to make this point. They live their lives without sowing seeds in fields, without reaping the crops, without storing up food in their barns like people do. Yet their lives, they don't depend upon worrying about those things, yet they have enough each day. The question is how? Because it says your Father in heaven feeds them. And if God takes care of birds, which are much less valuable than us, His children, there's no reason for us to be anxious about these kinds of things. He even says that worrying has never lengthened anybody's life, not even an hour. Next, he uses lilies to make this point. They grow without any effort of their own. They don't toil, they don't spin, they don't depend upon worrying about finding water or how they'll look, yet they grow into the most splendidly beautiful flowers. How? Because your Father in heaven clothes the grass of the field. And if God takes care of lilies, which are much less valuable than us, His children, there's no reason for us to be anxious about those kinds of things. He even points out that our anxiety is related to our lack of faith in our Father's love, in His power, and His provision for us. He says, you don't need to worry. And He is the one who knows the Father better than anyone else. Those who don't know God as their heavenly Father, it says, are constantly anxious about these kinds of things. But you have a Father who knows every need of yours, so you just need to be concerned about what's most important, trusting and obeying God. And He, like a good Father, will see to it that all these things are provided for you. Again, Jesus says, because of who your Father is, don't be anxious. Trust your heavenly Father. He's cared for you yesterday, He's caring for you now, and will care for you forever. Without trying to discern in what ways God is like and unlike your earthly father, let's just use a few passages that tell us exactly the kind of Father that He is. The first one is in Romans chapter 8, verse 32, which speaks to His provision. He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also, along with Him, graciously give us all things? He's given us more than we can imagine in salvation and blessings through Jesus Christ, so we can trust Him for everything else that we need. The second one refers to security. Jesus explains in John chapter 10, my Father who has given believers to me, that's Jesus talking, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. And so as long as we continue to put our faith in Him, we are eternally secure. The third one is James chapter 1, verse 17, which first points out that he gives only good and perfect gifts. And secondly, all of these fatherly attributes, they never change. So what are you anxious about today? God already knows what it is and how you feel about it. And he's not indifferent towards you. He's lovingly sympathetic and truly desires to provide for his children all that they need. In fact, the things we often worry about most are the basic things any good father would be sure his children have. God will give us that and so much more. But will you trust him? Will you cast your cares upon him because he cares for you? Christian, you have a Father in heaven who wants to provide for you, to protect you, and to prove his love for you. But when you're busy worrying about those things, you don't give him a chance to do so, nor are your eyes open to how he does those things. So take Jesus at his word and let your heart receive and rest in the wonderful truth that the all-powerful God, who is love, is taking care of you today. And when another wave of worry breaks, instead of trying to solve your problems on your own, run to your Father, whose ears and arms and heart are always open, and whose power and providence are truly in control of your life.